So, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to welcome our final speaker of the day, an accomplished business leader with over 20 years of global experience in corporate leadership roles, venture capital, and public markets investing. He is on a mission to help India's middle class protect themselves from death, diseases, and disability. When we talk about disrupting the online insurance space, there is no one better than our speaker, Sarbvir Singh, CEO for PolicyBazaar.com. In this fireside chat, Sarbvir Singh is in conversation with Dr. Annurag Batra, Chairman and Editor-in-Chief for BW Business World and Exchange for Media Group. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together. Welcome both of these gentlemen on stage, and let's dive into the world of online insurance space and how it is evolving.
Good evening, everyone. I know you had a day of learnings, connections, insights. It's always a happy feeling. I meet Mr. Singh. I met him more than 18 years back when he was a part of the senior leadership team at Network 18 and then became the CEO of Capital 18, making investments for the group and for Mr. Raghav Bell. Sarbvir, welcome to the Exchange for Media D2C Summit. PolicyBazaar is in some way a case study of taking a sector that is so under-penetrated and using digital to really make an impact, right? And again, today we're talking about direct-to-consumer, digital-to-consumer. PolicyBazaar pretty much fits that description. Give us a sense of, first on a philosophical level, how was the journey from being a insurance policy comparison site to a full offering of insurance and other related aspects, and then becoming what it has become and doing the IPO?
Thanks, Annurag and Exchange for Media for inviting us. Very happy to be here. I think the first point that we all have to understand about insurance is that insurance is something that we all know about, but we all tend to ignore. It's not top of mind for anyone. So one of the things that I was explaining to Annurag before this session is that it's not about bringing insurance to consumers, but what PolicyBazaar has done is brought consumers to insurance. And that's kind of an interesting challenge because very few consumers actually buy insurance. And we'd like to believe that it has been our mission and effort to change that, because typically if you see your own examples, you would have been sold insurance. Somebody would have been in your family, some agent, somebody would have come and said, you need this, or maybe given the demographics of this audience, maybe they would have come to your parents and said all these things. So I think the first point that is important to recognize about PolicyBazaar is that we were consumer first. So well before the whole D2C etc. was in fashion and was sort of talked about, we took an approach that we have to represent the consumer in an industry which was really agent first. So that was a big change that happened. And if I were to give a short answer to your question, I think we have been guided by the consumer. So we started by explaining to the consumer what is the need for insurance. So we created awareness around why you need insurance, why you need health insurance, term insurance, your family to protect your family. Then we said, okay, these are the products. How do you choose, right? There was very little knowledge about insurance. So we said, how do you choose? What is a good policy? What are the features of a policy? Then we sold that policy to you. Then we helped you with the claims, etc. So I think the evolution of PolicyBazaar has been by following the consumer. And I would say that the listing, of course, a very proud moment for the company, but I think was a milestone in that journey. By no means, is that journey kind of even half complete. I think we have, 99.9% of our work left. And I think there's a lot of opportunity, and I think we're only growing faster as we scale up.
Sarbvir, also financial services is a domain, and BFSI and insurance and related domains, they're still very under-penetrated in India. If you just take the insurance sector, we are less than 4.2% of our population has access to insurance. Of course, you're trying to address that. Tell us how, being D2C in a true sense, you are digital, and you talked about the fact that consumers are coming and asking for insurance rather than salespeople going to consumers and seeking insurance from them. That change has happened. Post-COVID, health insurance has become very important. Today, vehicle insurance is very much part of buying a vehicle. office insurance, all kinds of insurance, but life insurance still has a long way to go, right? What are you doing to be able to leverage digital to grow this 4% to say 10%? And second, what is the role of D2C to reach tier 2 and tier 3 cities where the penetration of insurance is even lesser than this 4%?
So, let me explain. What is the challenge with insurance? The challenge with insurance is twofold. One is awareness. So, like I said, you need to be aware that you need health insurance and term insurance. What does it really mean? The second is the fact that India is a very skeptical country, right? If I ask you to give me money today and tell you that you will get something later, your first instinct is कि वो बाद में ही देख लेंगे. So the trust, creating that trust is a very important factor. Because otherwise, see, insurance is a no-brainer, right? If you are paying me 15,000 rupees and if something happens to you, your family will get 1 crore, I would argue that everybody should buy it, right? I mean, what is there to think about? But people don't buy it. Like you said, only 4 out of 100 Indians have bought it. Now, so the challenge is that you have to be present, you have to explain all this to people, and you have to do it one-on-one. You have to keep explaining that this is happening, that is happening. And I think digital is the only medium which is possible. Because in larger cities, I can have branches, I can have people, I can do everything. But in smaller cities, it is never going to be economical to do this at a personal level. So if you see what the rise of PolicyBazaar and the rise of digital is actually has mirrored each other, right? And of course, we are a product of the digital boom and the fact that we have broadband and Wi-Fi and everything. But both have sort of reinforced each other. And if I give you some examples, right? Today, when COVID happened, when we all suddenly learned that we could all work from home and life will go on, so many people for the first time bought insurance from PolicyBazaar. So 5 years ago, just to give you a statistic, 5 years ago, about 30% of our business, less than 30%, came from tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Today, in 2022, over 60% of our business comes from there. And in those 5 years, we've also almost, grown 2.5 times. So if you see the magnitude of what is happening in tier 2, tier 3 cities, I think it's, and digital and insurance are made for each other in the sense, we are a virtual product, right? There is no product. When you buy insurance, you don't get anything. So I think in that sense, the digital revolution, the fact that we were there to provide the tools, the services, etc., have come together. And I think without digital, there would be no PolicyBazaar, obviously. And I don't think the penetration of insurance would also have been as high it is. I mean, long way to go, but still, we have made some progress over the last 5 years.
Again, Sarbvir, insurance seemed 3-4 years back an unlikely category for a digital impact and digital, so to say, ramp up. What are other categories that you see which are not yet touched in a big way by digital or the D2C revolution getting down the path that PolicyBazaar took or other brands that in the service play built really huge businesses?
So I think if you look at financial services broadly, see there are two parts to financial services. One is the distribution part, right? Which is what a lot of startups, a lot of people like us have also done, right? We are bringing products to the masses. We are bringing products to people who would not have had access. Now there is a second part. There's an equally deep layer at the other side, which is the product side, which is risk, right? As to whether it's the risk of when you make a loan, whether you'll get your money back. In the case of insurance, whether, how many people will claim, etc. So I think the second part is still untouched or largely untouched by, fintechs. And there's a reason for that. The reason is that the second part tends to be regulated. So in the second part, you cannot, just do whatever you feel like at the front end. You can't just do things just because, you feel it's okay. And let me explain to you why. See, in an insurance company, the biggest challenge is that if it was not regulated, right, I will take your money, and if I disappear after, 6 months or 1 year or 5 years, I will leave a whole bunch of people in the lurch, right? So hence it has to be regulated. And minute something is regulated, it requires a certain discipline and a certain mindset. You have to have a very long-term mindset to, win in that category, to participate in that category. So my feeling is that we are now at that point where you can clearly see more and more companies, the word full stack is used now quite often. And I think full stack means that you're not just in one part of the value chain, but you're doing everything. So PolicyBazaar, just to, give you an example, was in the front end, right? We were creating awareness, we were explaining policies, and we were selling policies. But now, as much as we sell policies, we also focus on the service part, right? If you need to make any changes to the policy or whenever, there's a moment of claim. So we are part of that moment of claim as much as we are part of the sales process. And it is my submission that, this is what others will have to do. So I think you are seeing lending companies are now doing everything, starting from sourcing to, making the final lending decision. And the same thing will happen in, I believe, in other areas of financial services, which is wealth management, which is, mutual funds, etc., stockbroking, etc. So I think that's the thing. You have to get your hands dirty and you have to get into the real part of the business and not just the front end.
Sarbvir, again, D2C is dealing with headwinds that are very, very strong. What do you think is the future for D2C brands that reach a certain saturation, they reach their potential, and to be able to grow to the next level, they have to rely on physical distribution, if I may use the word that you use. So, do you see that happening in insurance also, where right now you're purely digital, there is some kind of interface you provide, because in India, the consumers like that hand-holding. But do you see D2C businesses and brands which reach a certain critical mass, then to be able to go to their next level, use physical distribution? It happened in edutech, it is happening in edutech, where large edutech players which have weathered the edutech storm are continuing to build physical presence. What do you have to say there?
No, absolutely. I think, the reality of life is that you have to go wherever the consumer is. So, what is the big challenge for D2C brands? The biggest challenge is customer acquisition cost, right? And if you spend your money only on Google and Facebook and you expect that you can earn a decent return on that, it's not possible. Because just think of it, these are auction platforms. So there is enough people who will keep bidding till, you reach the marginal cost. Otherwise, somebody else will bid, right? There is always some well-funded person floating around in the world. So I think the first thing in a D2C business is that you have to get your funnel right. You have to have an acquisition engine. You have to have some kind of repeat business which is there. So the reason we succeed is that 80% of our business comes from direct. People who come to PolicyBazaar.com, who over the last 14 years have seen Akshay Kumar and others and have realized that this is the place where I have to go and have had a good experience. Now the second point is, having spent the money and got this person...
Are you also showing Akshay's movies?
We make sure everything is insured, yeah.
Okay.
But
or Ranveer Kapoor's, no, I'm kidding. Whichever.
So the second part is that once you've got that person, once you spend the money, now you have to convert that person. And you can't take a very purist approach that I will only speak to you on the phone, or I will only convert online, or I will only, do a video call. So like PolicyBazaar today not only does all these things, but we also ask that person, if you would like, we would send a person to your house. We have now branches in 40 cities. We have presence in 60 cities. So we are wherever the customer wants to be. I think Coke or somebody had this slogan that you have to be within an arm's length of desire, that there should be a Coke vending machine or a Coke availability wherever a consumer wants it. And I think the same thing we believe, that if a customer has come to us, has expressed interest, we are not focused on whether it's digital or online or offline. We want to make sure that that person gets the service in the way they want it. And I think that's something, to your point, all companies will have to do. You have to go, see, India is not just the people in this room, right? It's a, there's a huge world outside. And that world has to be serviced the way they want it, not the way we would like to. So that's, I think, one of the big differences, if you see, between companies that do well and don't do well, is that the companies that do well are able to put themselves in the shoes of the real consumer and do what they want to do versus what is right or what, appears right, or, people will say scalable or not scalable. See, everything is scalable if you can, execute. And I think you have to put yourself in the shoes of the customer and not in any other, way.
My last two questions before I bring the audience into the conversation. One is, if you had to look at a scenario 12 to 18 months, I'm not taking a very long view, but I'm taking a immediate future view, where do you think the penetration of insurance would be? Because you have data to look at the kind of growth happening every quarter, every month, every week. So where would that be? And where would PolicyBazaar be there? In terms of that growth, if the growth is from 4 to 6.5% or 7%. And the second question, which is related, in the media business, in the distribution business, we use the word omni-channel, omnipresence. And you illustrated that you have physical resellers or sales agents or offices, whatever you want to call, where the consumers are. Give me a sense that these companies that started in the virtual world, like yours, there are a lot of players in the room and outside who started purely in the digital world, built a scale in the digital world, but in some way will become physical omnipresence companies and hence may lose some of the advantages on cost, on asset light, that came with being D2C. And I'm an investor in a couple of D2C companies, and there is this dilemma: you reach a certain scale and you want to go physical because that will bring the next set of customers, but it means costs, and you're going against your fundamental premise of being D2C. So how do you balance that?
Sure. Let me take the second part first. See, the point that what I was trying to make even earlier is that you have to always think about your business model, right? What is the model and what is going to give you the scalability and how can you make money? And I think you have to, every question has to be answered. So for us, the reason we can do it in an offline way is that we have spent the money to get that person to us. He has come, he has shown interest. Now at that point, we are sending that person. So the incremental cost of sending the person to meet and close the sale is less than what we would make from the sale. So our overall conversion is going up. If we were at X, now we are at 180% of X or 200% of X. So the key in the whole thing is that whatever is your business model, it has to be strengthened by what you are doing. See, what you can't do is to say that, okay, I'm a D2C brand and now I will suddenly start behaving like a FMCG company and, have a whole beat, of people floating around and doing everything. But then of course, you don't have the right to win in that environment. That's why you started a D2C business. So again, I think everyone has to figure out the solution to their own particular problem. But the answer always lies in saying that what is your right to win and how are you going to amplify it by going D2C? And if you're not being able to amplify your right to win by going D2C, then I would suggest, by going offline, then don't go offline. Because then you are going in an area where there are stronger people and eventually they will, bash you up, right? So for us, just to give you an example, if we just started becoming like an agency business, right, and we relied on agents and asked them to find business, etc., then I don't think PolicyBazaar would succeed. The reason we succeed is because we have incoming traffic and we are able to convert that traffic in an efficient manner. So I think the answer always lies in obviously understanding your business model and understanding why you're winning and amplifying that. And if you're not, then I would suggest that you should wait, before you go offline.
So, Sarbvir, though this is a bonus question, you were part of the team that invested in, I am assuming, and I think I would be right on it, in digital business back in Network 18, right? Including Ashish's company, Book My Show, right? What are the similarities between the startup boom now and the startup germination then? And what are the dissimilarities? What are things that we should watch out for? Because you saw because you were also the CEO of Capital 18, which is putting in money in such startups. So what are the similarities and what are the things to watch out for?
See, I think there aren't that many similarities, right? At that time, everything was a hope, right? There were, I think, few million Indians who were using the internet and, smartphones had just come on. So I think everything was a hope at that point. I think there we were just taking a punt that, it happened in other countries and it will happen here. And of course, that was the reasonable punt actually. And I think there we were very much focused, as I'm sure today also people are, on the individual, right? We were saying that who is the founder, whether the founder has the persistence. See, finally, making a company is a hard job, right? You've done it yourself, so I'm sure you have a good sense of that. It is a hard grind. It's not very glamorous, There may be some moments when it's very good and, you get some awards, etc. But 99.9%, it's really a lot of hard work. So I think you need people who are going to willing to put in that hard work, right? Who have a sense of, mission and are willing to put in the hard work. Because I found that people who chase money, right, that is never going to work. They can get lucky. See, you can always get lucky and it may work out. But in reality, it will never work out because it's just too hard. There's so many things that will happen and you will give up at that stage. Now, so what is different about today, I think, is that the entrepreneurs of today are much smarter, I think, than the entrepreneurs of that time. They are much more aware. They have a lot of knowledge. They have a lot of learnings. Capital is very easily available. I mean, I know 2022, it may seem as if capital is hard, but trust me, if you didn't want to be in 2000.
I gave that number. Jan to June last year was 4.2 billion. In the winter of investing, Jan to June was 14.4 billion.
Right.
So clearly it is not that hard, as it seems.
It's crazily different from what it used to be. Earlier in India, to raise a couple of crores was a huge deal. It was felt like ye to ho hi nahi sakta. Today, people are raising $20 million in seed rounds and, all kinds of stuff. So anyway, I think that's not the point. I think the point is capital is available. The market is much larger. There are 600 million Indians with smartphones. And I think the entrepreneurs are
And
smarter.
130 million doing e-commerce actively and growing every minute.
Every minute. So I don't think there's any market issue anymore. But I will tell you one thing that has not changed from that then to now is that the persistence of the founder is still required. Because today also, it's not easy. See, market may be there, doesn't mean it's easy because there is a lot more competition. There are a lot more people competing, a lot more smarter people who have very clear ideas on what to do, who have read the same blogs that others have. So it's not easy because it's very competitive and you have to remain very focused and persistent. So I think the winning people will be similar then and now. You will have the same characteristics. But yes, I think right now you could argue that you will come across smarter and more knowledgeable people.
Thank you, Sarbvir. Please give Sarbvir Singh a big round of applause. We can take one or two audience questions. There's a lady there. Can we get a mic to her? Faster. And the gentleman, I can see them. And there's one. We'll take four. Two I see here and two I. And mics, can we get mics faster to the people? Yes. Go ahead. Ask your question.
Sorry, I think. Sorry. Hello, sir. Thank you for this insightful session. Since you mentioned about
What's your name and what is it that you do?
I am Ridhima. I am a marketing consultant. I'm a freelancer. I work with agencies as well as D2C brands. So I had this question since you mentioned about high CACs being one of the biggest problems that D2C brands mostly face. I wanted to understand, would you like to also emphasize upon how D2C brands, especially the emerging ones, should focus upon the repeat customer rate that there exists? Secondly, I have two questions, so I'll just put them together. Secondly, you also spoke about the shift from online to omni being a gradual process and how it is supposed to be tailor made for everybody. Do you see, in that light, do you see conversational commerce? Because you also mentioned that PolicyBazaar takes their customers through the entire cycle of purchase. Do you see conversational commerce being as the stepping stone for the D2C brands to take that into process?
Got it. Yeah. Keep your questions short, okay? Next three ones.
Sure. So I think the first part is very clear. Like I said, if customer acquisition cost is your biggest challenge, then repeat customers are absolutely, the key to the whole thing. And repeat customers are also very important because once a person has sampled your product or service, and if they don't like it, then there is something happening over there. That is some valuable information for you. So you should understand why it's not repeating. I would argue that the percentage of repeat, of course, is important, but the reason why people are not repeating is even more important because that will give you a clue as to what is happening and what is going wrong. So repeat and like I said, the reason for not buyers is a very important issue. I think the second point in terms of, sorry, your question is around omni-channel, right?
Conversational commerce.
See, again, I think it depends on the category. If you can, I would argue that the most important thing is engagement. See, anything that drives engagement will eventually drive commerce. So if you can drive real engagement, if it's in your brand, if it's conversational, I mean, it varies, right? In insurance, it's about explaining the product. In maybe in some beauty categories, maybe it's about seeing people, influencers who are using that product, etc. So I'm sure there are different levels of engagement or triggers of engagement. And I think you have to focus on engagement first. That are people engaging with your message? And then you can follow. So if they are engaging, then conversational commerce makes sense.
Go where your consumers are. Simple. The gentleman there. And can we have mics this side already in advance to these and not waste time? Yes, sir.
Yeah, good evening, sir. I am Somen. I run a consultancy agencies on government certifications, sales and marketing and recruitment. So 3 combined into 1. I am based out of Noida. My question is regarding the rural marketing versus the urban marketing. Whatever we have explained is all regarding the urban marketing. Whatever the rural folks, actually there is two India, as they say. One is urban India and one is Bharat.
We got your question. We got your question.
Thank you.
See, it's what we think about that is that actually, to be honest, that's also not the right way to look at it. There are rural people in urban India and urban people in rural India. So you have to understand who is your customer and why is that person buying your product. And it doesn't matter where they are. I mean, I can give you an example. In Gurgaon, you can find, rich people and poor people of all calibers and all categories. So I don't think you should think about it as in that way. You have to identify your customer, and once you've identified your customer, wherever they are, you have to support them. Now, the only challenge with rural or lower income, I would use the word lower income perhaps is what your context is, you have to be clear that you have a model that works for them. See, you can't get carried away by, see, you are either a charity which you're doing something for social good, then it's different. But if you are a real business, then you have to understand, can I make enough money from this person to cover my cost of serving that person? And that, like I said, doesn't matter whether it's rural or urban, it's a question of what that equation is. And you would be surprised, by the way, this whole thing of thinking that rural India is very poor and urban India is very rich is a bit of a misnomer now, and again, digital changes all that. Let's say there are lower percentage of maybe richer people in rural India, but that doesn't matter. Now they are accessible, right? Because they also have the same iPhone that you have, right?
2 questions there.
Yeah. Hi, Sarbvir. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah.
Right. It's an absolute privilege to be here and listen to you, sir. Thank you for the insights. My question is that you touched upon a very big pain point for D2C brands. How do we break free from these auction houses like Google, Facebook? Once you get stuck, after a while, the cost becomes high, and how do you break? How has PolicyBazaar done it? What is the way out of this? How to move to traditional platforms, maybe, because that is difficult, maybe costly for them. So what is your view on that?
Sure. So I'll tell you what we've done. So
Yeah.
I think we've done 2 things. One is that right from the beginning, the founders took a very clear view that we need to be present on television, because they said that TV is the medium which reaches all India. And in financial services, because trust is very important. So when you see a brand on television, you start to believe that this brand is larger than life, right? Consumer doesn't know how much money you spent in the brand, right? So the consumer feels that, okay, this is a trustworthy brand, TV pe dekha hai to theek hi hoga. So I think that was one very important call, which over the years has built up. See, with television, the problem is, unlike Google, you can't always measure exactly what's happening, right? Although we are fairly, I would say, sophisticated in our measurement. But that was the big difference, that it built the brand over a period of 10, 12, 14 years, to the point where today, when people do surveys about insurance, PolicyBazaar brand sometimes shows up very high, right? Probably after LIC or, HDFC or ICICI or something. So I think that brand strength has been built over a period of time, and that decision helped in creating this traffic. And the second thing is, I think as the person asked, is the repeat. The fact that people who bought, a 2-wheeler policy or a 4-wheeler policy from us started believing in PolicyBazaar, and they said, okay, now I'll buy health insurance and term insurance, from the same brand. So I think those are the 2 things that you have to do. Of course, you have to figure out what
Lifetime
works.
value of a customer and upsell.
A lot of patience as well while building the brand and not the retention.
Yes,
great.
that's true.
Thank you, sir.
Last question from the gentleman here.
Thank you, sir. Sir, very interesting talk and really a privilege to have 2 very knowledgeable gentlemen speak so well about the topic. My name is Manmeet, and I am heading the HR for a company called QKey Digital Media, co-founded by A.R. Rahman and Shikhar Kapoor. My question to you, sir, is there are many times where decisions go wrong. We might take, as leaders, great decisions, but they may go wrong. But before that decision is made, there is a consensus that the larger team takes. In fact, you have juniors in the team, but sometimes the fact that there is a big word called ego, which comes in the way that, okay, my decision is the best. So how do you curb that, and how do you realize the potential of maybe a person who's, because you can only join the dots when you look backwards and not forward. Sure. So how do you sort of encourage others to be part of the decision making and not really go by what the leader says? Thanks, sir.
So we are very clear. I don't know how other companies do it. In our company, it's not like the senior people make all the decisions. I think, like Apeksha is here, she heads communications for us. I mean, she decides. I mean, she doesn't have to ask me whether we should do A or B. I mean, she does whatever she feels like. Now, what is my job then, right? My job is not to make decisions and not to second guess people who are closer to the market or who are closer to their business and, their products or their function. My job is to put the right people in the right things and support them. See, the whole thing is about support. If something goes wrong, I always say that good leaders are people who take the blame, not the credit. See, anyone can take the credit. It's not a very hard thing to do, to stand in front of you and say, oh, I did this and I did that. What do you know, right? I mean, I can say anything to this audience. But I think it is the people who take the blame. That's where the organization builds. That when a person who is, let's say, working with me, and if something goes wrong, as you correctly said, things do go wrong. I mean, none of us can say that we are perfect. We stand by that person at that point and say, it was my decision, not this person's decision. And I think that's how good companies are built. Because people sort of then like to work in those environments. They feel, like if you talk to anybody, most of the people, I would say in PolicyBazaar, I think one of the things they will say to you is that they feel that it's their business. It's not, whoever founded it, it's not his business, it's not our investor's business, it's their business. So I would suggest that that's the key issue, that you have to give people the freedom and, like I said, take the blame instead of the credit. And you'll be surprised, minute you do that, the mood in the organization changes a lot, because then people are not afraid. See, what is the biggest thing is fear, right? We are all scared. Minute to take fear, and you can't always take it out 100%, but to the extent that you can, I think it changes the whole mood and culture of the company.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Please give Mr. Sarbvir Singh a bigger round of applause. He answered all your questions, gave you very specific responses. All the best, Sarbvir, to you and the PolicyBazaar team in terms of leading this category and growing the penetration of insurance in India, making sure more people have a insurance cover which they may use in terms of difficulty. And we've seen that last 27 months have shown us that we do need insurance. So clearly your category must grow and you must lead that category to be able to help all of us get to a point that our insurance needs are met. So we wish you luck, all the best, and we look forward to more conversations with you. Thank you.